Hello, Sister Joan. How are we doing?
I'm doing well today, Christian. How are you?
Doing well. We are here for our first edition, really. Technically, the last edition was our welcome. This is our first time jumping into a piece of material for Breakthrough. And today's a tough one. We're starting off with a pretty high bar on regarding severity and depth of something here.
Well, and the timeliness of it is it's an opportunity to address it even more.
Yeah, right. We have Super Bowl coming up, and what we're talking about here is sex trafficking. And there was on Long Island, there was a huge investigative piece done through Newsday, Sunday, January 28th. I have it right in front of me here. This piece right here, done by Sandra Petty. I want to give her a shout out here because it's really incredible, and it hurt to read. It's a 10 pages about deep dive into true stories of sex trafficking that are happening here on Long Island, right here in Brentwood, and through the stories of two folks, Tatiana and Jasmine, who were brave enough to share their story and share how they were thrown into this life. And yeah, I've never seen anything like this that was this exposing of something that is right here. So what did you think when you read it?
Well, it goes straight to the heart. But Ms. Petty puts it out, right in the midst of Human Trafficking Month that begins January 11th and will soon be coming to a close February 8th when we celebrate the feast of Josephine Paquita, a young woman who was sold into slavery and trafficking from Southern Sudan, and later really has become the patron when we look to work towards eradicating sex trafficking, human trafficking for sure. But to know that and to hear these stories of these young women who are in this article, but it's children, men and women who really are experiencing this heinous crime, and to know that it's right here in our neighborhood. Tatiana's right here in Brentwood, she references, and so trafficking is not something that's happening just at our borders, just in other countries, not our own. It's right in our neighborhoods.
Yeah, and it's and it's an ugly word to use this word because but it's an industry. Yes. And where there's industry and there's quote unquote business, and there's profit to be had by people, it's everywhere. And it's such an ugly way to word it, but it's an important thing to really paint the picture as it is, which is a real thing. It's happening. It's here. And for people, this is a business, and they are treating it like this. And I hate to say it, but by what's being reported here, it's skyrocketing, and it's getting even harder and harder to track and all these things. And it's just heartbreaking. But I have a few things I circled from the testimony piece that I just thought were really powerful. Tatiana says, "I belong to the streets, but I belong to God first. They have a hook on me, and it's like a loyalty thing." And I thought that was an interesting piece about this idea of both of them, the trauma of what they've been through at a young age, usually by someone that's quote unquote a friend or an uncle of some sort, somebody in their family or in their close group, that hooks them or traps them into this place where it does become a loyalty thing. And that's part of why people aren't able to track this as much, because there's this feeling of you can't talk about it. Right. You can't be disloyal to this the situation. And I thought that was really what was so troubling about it.
Yeah. And even as she mentions that, really her first prison experience really is what saved her. Yeah. To separate her from the prey. I mean, they are predators, and they're looking for vulnerable people that they could deceive. And like you say, with families, oh yes, here's my friend, and I'm with my uncle, and and she's figuring out what's this relationship with this niece and uncle, which is nothing at all. He's the pimp, right? So, and then how they're also lured by by promises, so here Tatiana, is pretty much on her own. The family disconnects from her. And so she's vulnerable. She's an easy prey. So if they're attracting her and the promises they make, and teenagers, disgruntled relationships sometimes with their parents, and the parents are saying, no, you can't have this, you can't have, oh, I can get your phone, so how they get entrapped as well, and then become that person's possession, if you will. So there's a lot of objectivity here. They are no way subject. Yeah.
The first paragraph of Jasmine's story is exactly that. After a troubled childhood, marred by sexual abuse and drug use, as a teenager, she runs away from home and then meets a man who promises to help her and to kind of pull her out of this, take care of her, and that quickly turns. And and I think it's important too. And these women, I mean, it's so incredible. Not only did they share their story, but they shared their names. They shared facts about their life that were very vulnerable. One of them mentioned of her daughter and how her greatest fear is that her daughter will be found. I was like, I can't believe this is in print. This is incredible. Right. And then their photos. So really, so inspired by their brave example. But these women oftentimes are labeled as so many things, so many negative words, or it's like, hey, we don't talk about this because, well, we don't know. They might have chose to do this, or might this or that, or another thing. And so much more.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes right down to it, they're victims.
Victims, yes.
And their life circumstances have brought them to this. Not that they have said, okay, I'm going to be right. And as they say, the system, has failed them. But they become victims, and the courage, like you say, for them to step out, and show their faces, have their names out there, takes a lot of courage, because even as Tatiana was saying, she still's like looking over her shoulder. Because they're still watching. You know what I mean? You mentioned living your life, your days that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny, people say all the time, like, you hear this open narrative of like, well, if you don't like that life, if that lifestyle, run away, go somewhere else. And it's like, think about your own life. Like, we are creatures of habit, and we are creatures of community and home. And it's very hard to just pick up and go somewhere. It's very hard to just refigure out your life. In fact, for a lot of these women, when they go to do that, that's when they get caught and they get trapped as well.
Right.
When they go. And so it's not as simple as, oh, why don't they just go figure something out somewhere else? Like, okay, where and how much money is that going to cost?
Christian, as we as a congregation have really been educating ourselves and becoming more aware of the issue of trafficking. And we've had sisters who have worked with other congregations on educating our sisters, and they've been to our schools and educating the schools. And one of the things that was shocking to many was that you can have a student, coming to school most every day, going about their learning and whatnot, and they're a victim of trafficking. And they're saying, well, no, they can't be trafficked. They're in school. Because then what they do is they use their family as their threat. So, you go to school, you continue life as usual, but this is what we're going to do with you. And if you do anything, say anything, we're going to go after your family. So out of fear, they comply, because they don't want to see anyone in their family being brought into this, injured or even killed, because there's no mercy with those who are perpetrating these heinous crimes.
Yeah, that's a really good point, important point rather, that trafficking isn't something where, people think, and there's a quote right here and I warn you all, and if you haven't figured it out by now, this is not a comfortable conversation. And these articles are not comfortable. So, but I do think anybody that's taking time to watch this, if you haven't seen this or read this, there's videos on the Newsday website of their testimony, and then there's the articles. I really encourage everyone to take that step and be aware of this, because it's not easy. But there's a line here: if you're selling drugs or guns, It's a one-time sale, but a person can be sold again and again. It's a high profit sort of low risk crime.
Mm-hmm.
And that was part of the segue of the conversation here that Sandra writes about, of why it's not being trackable, why fewer arrests are happening. They know more of it is happening, but they can't track it because it's becoming this thing that is just like you said, the fear of threat,
right.
this loyalty.
Yeah, and as the article says too, it's moved from the streets to social media.
Yeah.
And as wonderful as technology is and how it can connect people, across the planet, it's also very alluring and enticing,
Mm-hmm.
and those who, and I mean, young people, they're innocent in a way. And I remember when I said, they call it the World Wide Web for a reason, because when you put it out there, whatever your privacy settings or whatever, it's out there.
It's out there.
And people get it, and so all of this meeting up, we have all of these different apps where you can meet up with people, and it all starts out very innocent and attentive and seemingly okay, but then that's the trap. And
It
then
starts from this,
there.
like you said, this area of protection. Somebody's invulnerable and saying, I'll protect you, and then it's the complete opposite, and it's like it's pure evil. I mean, it's just there's few things that really get me worked up like this. It is pure evil, and to kind of put I don't want to say our positive spin on this, because that's not, we don't want to, but to just offer a little bit of hope to all of you watching. The breakthrough here is that these two women were brave enough to share their stories, share their names, Tatiana Taylor and Jasmine Krukowski. And the breakthrough is that we now have their names and their faces to pray for, to look at them and hold them up as the children of God that they are. And then in that, let it inspire us to be more aware of these stories that are out there, and then how we can get involved. And so there's a bunch of different organizations, and we'll put some links in the show notes here of different places that are out there doing this work.
Right. And it's, we have the Alliance to End Human Trafficking, founded and supported by U.S. Catholic Sisters. And they have lots of educational and prayer resources. There is the ECPAT, to end child prostitution and trafficking. And they're global. I even think they have a NGO status at the UN. And then Talitha Kum, which is more of an international network of sisters, really. So there are good people networking and providing the education, the resources to really heighten people's awareness, to learn more about it, to be observant of it. Passing people in a shopping mall or the airport or whatever, what does that relationship look like?
You see something, you say something. I mean,
exactly.
Run that risk of being offensive. This is like one of the few areas where it's like, run the risk of being offensive and being weird and making a mistake, because odds are your gut's right if you see something.
Right. And, I've seen a few TV commercials where you'll see this and you'll see this young person give some kind of a sign for help. So to really,
if you ever see this,
yeah,
that's the sign. Actually, there was a whole PSA about it, that if you see someone do that to a security camera, it means they're not safe, and it's help.
Right.
And it saved lives.
Yes.
That awareness.
Right. So it's like, to really walk with our eyes wide open, and pay attention.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, a tough one for sure, but an important one. And so again, Sandra Petty, God bless you. This was incredible work, and these two women. So that's our breakthrough for today, especially now as we go forth to Super Bowl weekend here. High volume of movement and people. Statistically speaking, this is known to be a time where trafficking can happen fairly often. Not saying to ruin your Super Bowl experience, but maybe take a few moments during whatever you're doing. Maybe you're gonna be at a party, say a prayer together. gather and bring awareness of that. Maybe bring this up and talk, and share that awareness. So
yeah, the more who know and the more we know can save lives.
Amen.
Sure.
Amen. Yeah. Well, thanks, Sister Joan.
Thank you, Christian, and thank you, Jasmine and Tatiana and Sandra, really for your work, and know that we hold you in our hearts and prayers for sure, and all others.
All right, peace.
Okay, have a good one.